There are precious few games that are so iconic they become a part of pop culture itself. The likes of Fortnite, Pokemon, or Minecraft are instantly recognizable to any Johnny non-gamer, although they will probably change seats on the bus if you keep banging on about them. Everyone knows about it, almost everyone has played it at some point or another, and around 5 million people still subscribe to the biggest MMO in the world. Hell, lots of celebrities even play it, helpfully reminding us that MMOs are cool now and not just for nerds! From humble beginnings in 2004, WoW has taken players on a journey of impossible raids, fan theories, real-life theme parks, friendships, partnerships, marriages, and that's without mentioning the 10 years of previous Warcraft games and their influence on the genre. With the release of WoW Classic pulling players back 15 years into a craze of loot-grinding nostalgia, and Warcraft 3 Reforged also arriving at some point, what better time to have a look at some of Warcraft's more intriguing in-game and IRL lore? Should we look at some? Let's look at some. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Warcraft. Number 10. The Lost Story of Corrupted Ashbringer. A fantasy RPG world is often judged on the quality of its rich and interesting lore trademark, and Warcraft's 25 years of universe building does not disappoint. From epic sagas to minute references, you could lose weeks just trawling through the game's 300,000 wiki pages, and one such wiki fodder mystery is the story of Corrupted Ashbringer, a two-handed epic sword. Originally, players could get the drop in the 40-man Wrath of the Lich King raid, Naxxramas. But things changed when the raid was moved to Northrend, as many of the old bosses were left behind, along with the sword itself. People who got the drop before the switch could trigger a unique event if they equipped Corrupted Ashbringer in the cathedral wing of the Scarlet Monastery in Hearthglen. You're welcomed by the Crusaders and the Scarlet Commander Renault Mograine, before the shock return of his dead father's spirit, High Lord Alexandros Mograine, who serves up some justice to a disobedient son, and then you're treated to some interesting background lore, if you're into that sort of thing. Number 9. Before the world, there was Warcraft. Yeah, WoW lore is insanely in-depth, but what about the IRL lore of the very origins of Warcraft before the world was formed? The biggest MMO to have ever MMO'd didn't materialize from nowhere after all, but evolved from an RTS series beginning in 1994 with Warcraft, Orcs and Humans. But you already knew that, didn't you, you clever clogs? What you may not know is that, surprisingly for such a lore-rich universe, the first game's story had no script and was completely improvised in a recording studio by producer Bill Roper, who may or may not have recently binged the Lord of the Rings book at the same time, given the orc-heavy content. The earlier genre classic, 1992's Dune 2, set the standard for many RTS staples and inspired Blizzard to develop their own version, taking advantage of a gap in the market for similar titles. And during early development, lead producer and programmer Patrick Wyatt even used Dune 2 assets as a placeholder. With new additions like the now universal click-and-drag selection and improvements to online modem battles, Warcraft was a trailblazer for the RTS scene, and alongside titles like Command & Conquer, sparked a boom for the click-heavy, big fight genre. Number 8. Unique art style influenced by bad TVs. Part of the appeal for WoW is undoubtedly the unique aesthetic, the exaggerated features, almost cartoony yet remarkably detailed, and it's helped the 15-year-old game age rather well, all things considered. And it all goes back, once again, to the olden days of the mid-90s RTS classic. Part of the reason for the style comes from the team's past experience working on SNES and Mega Drive releases. These games required more dynamic, vibrant colours in order to stand out more vividly on TVs that were traditionally worse at displaying colours when compared to PC monitors. Essentially, there's a reason old console games were brighter than your average street carnival. The other factor was president and co-founder of Blizzard, Alan Adam, who realized that because most people played games in bright rooms with lots of glare and interference, the art had to stand out in that environment. He even went through the office opening window blinds and turning on more abrasive fluorescent lights, which wasn't popular with the artists at the time, but it's hard to argue with the beautiful results. Number 7. There's an actual World of Warcraft band. Game development isn't all netcodes, texture maps, and trying to decipher whatever this does. Even developers get some downtime sometimes where they can pursue hobbies like knitting, falconry, or starting a band like these Blizzard employees did in the early 2000s. Elite Tauren Chieftain have played their horde-heavy rock at various venues around the world, both Warcraft and Real, often performing live at BlizzCon. The band started with covers before producing their own music that first featured in the credits of Warcraft 3's Frozen Throne expansion. Previously known as 10th Level Tauren Chieftain, Level 80 Elite Tauren Chieftain, the artists formerly known as Level 80 Elite Tauren Chieftain, and briefly Level 800 Elite Tauren Chieftain for StarCraft 2. Their hits include Power of the Horde, Rogues Do It From Behind, and I Am Murloc. If you ever wanted to catch them live in the World of Warcraft, they can be seen and heard during the Dark Moon Fair, a monthly event that happens at Dark Moon Island, accessible through portals near GOLDSHIRE and Thunder Bluff. And strictly no Alliance nerds, alright? Number 6. There's also a Warcraft theme park! While the house band is probably Blizzard approved, consisting of actual Blizzard employees playing at actual Blizzard events, the World of Warcraft theme park is far from kosher. World Joyland, as it's called, is a theme park located in Changzhou, China, which is, shall we say, inspired by the popular Warcraft and StarCraft franchises. It's bold, it's brazen, and it looks actually quite impressive, to be fair. Reportedly costing around $48 million or £30 million, we suppose it's bound to look better than a typical fairground, but just look at these blatant rip-offs laughing in the faces of copyright lawyers everywhere. Some of these things aren't even Warcraft, that's literally a Transformers sign there. And we're not even sure what the hell this thing is. Maybe a panda-based recreation of a tricky raid? According to a visitor from Hollywood Reporter, one staff member at the park wasn't quite sure if the theme park had actually opened first and that the 2016 movie hadn't just copied the park, which is, gloriously optimistic, and you know what, they might actually have a point. But we don't talk about that movie, do we? Number 5. That movie adaptation. Oh, we tried to ignore it, we really did, but it's impossible not to address the $160 million CGI fest, mainly because for so long, it didn't even look remotely possible. Unlike other planned game-to-movie adaptations from BioShock to Halo, this one was unusual in that it actually got made, though many critics would say it probably shouldn't have. Not only did it manage to alienate newcomers to the franchise with stilted characters and a scattered story, but it also managed to put off some long-term WoW players too, as it chose instead to follow the plot of 1994's Warcraft, widely considered the weakest storyline, and as we've already discussed, ad-libbed in a studio. Despite all this, the film actually grossed $433 million worldwide, beating Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time as the highest-grossing video game adaptation of all time. Even stranger, most of that was from Chinese audiences, whose fervent following contributed $222 million. The movie did need $450 million total to break even, so it was still seen as a flop commercially, but this was one of the weirdest box office anomalies at the time, and it could have been worse. At one point, the director's chair was coveted by famed nightmare director Uwe Boll. Number 4. The Creepy Children of GOLDSHIRE. The big-budget movie was just one story, but there are many, many more littered across the vast world of Warcraft. And while the grand stories are, grand and all, it's the little tales of curiosity that really give the game life. Venture into the wrong farmland, for example, and you might fall foul of a mechanical exploding sheep. Wander into the woods and you could see some familiarly named critters like Bambina, Mother of Bambina, and Thudder the Rabbit. Or if you prefer waking up terrified in cold sweats, you could go find the Children of GOLDSHIRE. These 6 disturbed youths appear at 7 a.m. server time in a house in northeast GOLDSHIRE, and from there wander about the town, disturbing the locals by forming a pentagram shape as they move. What? If you're feeling brave and follow them closely, you'll even hear eerie music and random disturbing sound files, from banshee screams and crying to horrifying old god Khatun's disembodied voice promising death and generally nasty things, and then they just disappear at 8 a.m, leaving you to question whether they were real and whether investing in a nightlight is still acceptable as an adult. Number 3. A World of Warhammer? In the year 12 BWOW, before World of Warcraft, even before the name Warcraft was settled on, there was much debate at Blizzard HQ. They had the skeleton of an interesting-looking RTS, but needed to move on from the placeholder Dune 2 assets, and president and co-founder Alan Adam wanted to get the license for the Warhammer universe to capitalize on brand recognition of a popular franchise. But while these days Warhammer licenses are handed out like pick and mix sweets, a deal was trickier to finalize in the early 90s, and this, combined with a desire from Blizzard to control their own IP scuppered that deal. Plus, according to the lead producer, they'd already had terrible experiences with licenses after DC Comics' Death and Return of Superman and Justice League Task Force. The team also considered adopting a total war approach themed around historical settings such as the Roman Empire or the Vietnam War, all under the Warcraft banner, until the art team convinced them to go with a more fantasy style inspired in part by Warhammer. Still, in an alternate universe, we could have had not only a World of Warhammer but a Total Warcraft series as well. Makes you think. Number 2. The Corrupted Blood Incident. Early players of 2005 WoW might still remember the horrifying plague known as the Corrupted Blood Incident, causing hundreds of afflicted to spontaneously erupt in torrents of blood, die, respawn, and rinse repeat. This wasn't an intentional event. This was a virtual epidemic that became all too real, and it all started with a serpent blood god named Hakar, the Soul Flayer. This end boss in a new raid in Zol Garub had a nasty HP siphoning effect, and to counter it, players would willingly infect themselves with a contagious, health-draining debuff that would then infect the boss himself. The disease was meant to be contained in the raid area only, but a bug that allowed pets to catch it, despawn, and introduce it to the outside world caught both players and developers by surprise. A vicious outbreak followed, affecting even NPCs as players walked through the cities strewn with the bones of victims and desperately struggled to contain it in quarantine zones until Blizzard fixed the unexplained virus a week later. Amazingly, this simulated outbreak was used years later to research real-world epidemics and behavioral patterns, so in a way, World of Warcraft might just save all our lives one day. Maybe. Number 1. The Unbeatable Raid Boss. Some raid bosses are tricky. Some will make you wish you could inflict a whole new virus upon the world and end all of civilization out of pure frustration. The Great Old God, Khtoon, is one of the latter. We understand that this half Lovecraftian, half deviant art monstrosity is meant to be an all-powerful being, so it's not like it should go down in a couple of hits. But hang on, 80 days? Yes, it took 80 days of players banging their heads against a brick wall of nonsense laser beams and lethal tentacles before anyone finally beat this boss. That is beyond challenging. It's just downright sadistic. The insane difficulty led to numerous forum posts crammed with complaints about it being impossible, and it's easy to see why. The requirement to do around 230,000 damage every 60 seconds while avoiding getting eaten or party wiped by tentacles or I-beams led to many top competitive guilds working together to work out a way to beat it. But thankfully, after 80 days on April the 26th, 2006, Blizzard ended players' suffering and nerfed the bugged Khtoon fight, scaling back the damage, and thus, 2 hours later, he was finally defeated by European guild Nihilum. Relief, elation, justice, and sweet loot was had that day, but you could say old pre-patch Khtoon still had the last laugh as undefeated champion of Azeroth. And there we are, a little more Warcraft-wise, ready for the return of an old classic, but we know there's plenty more to discover. It's a big world after all, so let us know any of your favourite things about the Warcraft universe in the comments below. You can follow myself and TripleJump on Twitter here, and while you're at it, why not support the things you enjoy by having a look at our Patreon. Finally, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and thanks for watching.